Hello, my name is Kenzie Phillips Elston, and this is my Decision Point 3 presentation. So the first thing I want to talk about with my student teaching experience is my communication with my mentor teacher. So I had my mentor teacher's name was Crystal Field, and my student teaching experience was a little different than everybody else's. So I actually had my own classroom. I got offered a job a week before my student teaching started at a different school at a different grade level. So I was intending to be a third grade student teacher, and I ended up being a kindergarten teacher by myself. My mentor teacher's name was Crystal, and she was a kindergarten teacher. So she had her own classroom, and I had my own classroom. But even with that circumstances and me not being with her daily and her not getting to see me, um, teach every single lesson every single day, I still had a very strong communication with her. I had daily meetings with her before, during, and after school. Literally anytime I could talk to Crystal, I was in her classroom. She probably was like, oh my gosh, Kenzie, get out of my classroom, because I was with her so often. But we really just got a really good relationship as the semester went on, and I felt comfortable going to her with absolutely anything. I was with her before school, after school, during school, anytime. She's like, what do you need? What can I do? What do you need help with? And we would just run with it, and we were together all the time. We also had a set daily planning time that was 11:55 to 12:45, which is when the kids are at their specials. So that was not only time for me to communicate with my mentor teacher, but also my grade level. So we had a really strong communication with my grade level as well, to the whole kindergarten team. There's 5 kindergarten teachers at my school, and every Tuesday we'd get together and we would plan our lessons for the following week. One person would take math, one person takes reading, one person takes spelling, one person takes vocab, and one person takes newsletters. And we kind of just divide and conquer, and we would plan for the next week. We would also take that daily planning time to decide on what our course of action is for the next week. So we reflect on our data, look at our assessments from the week before, from that Friday before, say what went really well, what are our students struggling with, what do we need to do next? And we just constantly have that communication as the weeks go on. And we're just a really strong unit. And I feel like me and Crystal were a strong unit, but the grade level as a whole is a strong unit, because we always have that open communication and trying to figure out what we need to do next, what we need to do better. And we just kind of lean on each other as a unit. I also had really good communication with my administration. Bobby and Krista are the principal and vice principal, and we would just do like weekly check-ins, like, hey, how you doing, Kinsey? Like, you're getting through it. It's okay. You're doing great. And like just that weekly check-in and asking them, like, what do you recommend I do when this happens? And just like constantly communicating with them as much as I possibly can. So yeah, that's just how I kind of communicated with not only my mentor teacher, but also my grade level and my admin. Classroom management was a big thing for my classroom. So to start off, the beginning of the year, my starting point, I implemented the 10 stars strategy. So you can see down here in the bottom, there's a number line 0 through 10, and we started at the beginning of the year with 0 stars. Every time my students did something really great as a whole class, I gave them a star. Once we get to that 10 star, we get a party. And the students, who doesn't love a party? So we would have the opportunity, once they get to that 10 star, to decide what we want to do as our class party, whether it's an ice cream party, go outside, popcorn, a movie, whatever they want to do, they get to decide. But they have to earn those 10 stars. So it kind of established a positive classroom environment, because they worked together to get those stars. They held each other reliable, like, hey, you're not supposed to be doing that. We're going to lose a star. And they would just go with each other, and they were strong and confident all the time. And they wanted to work together to get that 10th star, to have that party. So it really helped with my classroom environment. But when in the beginning of the year, I had a lot of behavior issues. This has been one of the toughest kindergarten classes that Southwestern's seen in a while. So there's a lot of behavior issues. So my star chart was great, but also those 5 behaviors were causing my whole class as a whole to lose stars constantly. So I felt like I was never rewarding my kids that were doing a really great job and that deserved that party. So I ended up implementing, probably a month into the school year, a clip chart, which is more of an individual thing. So I kept my star chart, but I also added the clip chart. And they always start on green. And if they get up to that purple, they get to be the leader of the day. I draw from those students. So you can see on this particular day, I had 6 students on purple. So I take those 6 students' names and I draw one. I'm like, you get to be my leader of the day. You're my line leader all day. Anything I need help with, you're my go-to person. So it allows my students to get to be a leader and just be that shining star in my class, and they love it. They feel so special. And it not only um shows me like I notice you're doing something good, and it doesn't take it away from them if they lose a star, because they know they're on purple. They're doing everything right, and it's not necessarily their fault if they lose a star. And if they get down to red, then that's when I contact the parents or they go to the office, depending on the situation. But it basically just holds my whole class reliable. And with my star chart, if we get to the 10th star and you've had red twice in that party period that we've, like, say, I haven't had a party for 2 weeks. If you got two reds in that week, 2 weeks, you don't get to participate in my party because you made actions that led you to get on red. And that means that you weren't being a rebel star, so you don't get to have fun with our party in our class. And just like kind of hold them reliable for their actions, because if they get on red nonstop but they still get to participate in my party, it just shows them that it's okay what they're doing, and it's not. So it kind of just holds them reliable. But it really, both strategies together make a really strong classroom environment because they want to get on purple. They want to get to be the leader of the day. They want to see their friends on purple too. They cheer each other on when they get on purple, like, wow, Canberra, you're already on purple. Like, you're doing so good. And they just like are each other's cheerleaders as well as mine. And I just feel like these two strategies together have made a really strong classroom as a whole. The importance of establishing a positive learning environment. So I've kind of talked about like ways that I formed a positive classroom environment, but I feel like the most important thing in my classroom is forming strong relationships. Like, yes, I want them to learn, but I want them to trust me more than anything. And if they don't trust me, then they're not going to learn. They're not going to get to their full potential because they're constantly going to be in that fight or flight. Like, oh, I can't trust her. So like, I don't want to listen to her because she might not be telling me the truth. But if they trust me and they realize like, wow, Miss Elston is really there for me and that she would do anything for me, then it's going to impact their learning because they're going to want to open up to me and talk to me at all times. Another important thing is just feeling safe in my classroom, whether it's emotionally, physically, anything. I want them to feel safe at all times. And I talk about ways that I'm there for them no matter what. And I want you to feel safe in my classroom, and I want you to be my best friend because honestly, there are 23 of my best friends. I love my kindergarten class more than anything. And if they don't feel safe, then I'm not doing my job right. So I want to make sure that they feel safe. Otherwise, I feel like their learning is going to suffer because they're constantly on edge, like, I don't feel safe. And they need to just get in that fight or flight mode. And I don't want them to feel that way. Another way that I establish a positive learning environment is I always take time to listen to my students' feelings. Even if it feels so unimportant to me, it means everything to them just to take that time to listen to them and to just be their friend more than anything, not necessarily their teacher. Just listen to them and be that person in their life that will listen to them no matter how busy they are. And sometimes I struggle with that. Don't get me wrong. Like sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't care. Go sit down. But I'm like, they need this. They need to talk to me because they might not get to communicate like that at home. So I just want them to know that I'm here to listen to them no matter what it is. And another thing that I do is I take time each morning just to see how they're doing mentally, emotionally, and physically. So like even if it's just like thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs aside, how are you feeling? Are you feeling really good? Are you feeling really bad? Do you need to talk? If they have their thumb down, I'm concerned and I need to talk to them or take time to just see what's going on. And something that I would like to implement, hopefully next semester, like in the winter term, is handle with care. So it's just the idea that the parents know that I have a system in place that I want to put in place, that if their student is really struggling at home, whether it's a family thing or a mental thing or anything, they can send in a note that says handle with care. They don't have to tell me anything about the situation, just that I need to handle the student with care because they're likely to blow up or something is really going to weigh on their mind that might inhibit their learning and that might cause tension in the classroom, just so that I know that I need to be cautious with the student today because they're going through something that's affecting them. And I want them to feel that I recognize that they're struggling, but I want them here no matter what. Such as some of the ways that I have implemented a positive classroom and learning environment in my classroom, and just things that I do to make my classroom as positive as possible, because it helps establish an inclusive community of learners when we feel safe in my classroom. And the next thing I want to talk about is the importance of engagement and motivation. So I feel like I try to have high levels of engagement all the time because it's kindergarten and their attention span is literally 5 minutes. So if they're not engaged, they're going to get distracted and they're going to cause the whole class to be distracted, and then no learning gets done. So I try to be goofy and fun and just make them be like, what is this girl gonna do next? And they like constantly have their eyes on me. So some examples that I have that I feel like I had some really strong student engagement was when I was teaching them long and short vowels. So I was completely goofy and I would say, so the short vowel says ah. And so what's the long vowel say? And we go, A, and we would just sing it. And we sounded so goofy, but it stuck. So every time we learned, I was like, what's the short vowel say? And they would do this and they'd be like, ah. And then they say, what's the long vowel? And they go, A, and they like sing it so loud and they don't care how silly they sound, but they're having fun and they're engaged and they're motivated to learn because they're having so much fun. And it sticks. And when it sticks, I mean, that's the best thing ever because you know that they have that in their little brains and they're staying there and they're having fun while they're doing it. Another lesson that I felt like I had really high engagement was when we did our triangle lesson. I taught them about the triangles, um, like how to describe a triangle, what it looks like, what it doesn't look like, and blah, blah, blah. So we would go outside afterwards and we had them find triangles on the playground and they had a blast. They were like, oh my gosh, Miss Elston, there's a triangle. I'm like, where? And I'm like, go point to it. And they'd like run. And it not only got them outside moving and being I don't know the word, being active, they also got the chance to learn, but they didn't even realize that they're implementing what they just learned into this lesson. They just know they're outside having fun fighting triangles on the playground. And they just loved it. They were constantly engaged and they were so happy when they got to show me a triangle. And it was just a fun way to implement the lesson. Another lesson was learning how to count and write numbers. So I like to act like I am clueless and I don't know anything after I've taught a lesson. And I'm like, okay, I have my little pointer and I'm like, I'm looking for the number 6. And I have up in my room, there's big numbers 1 through 10 on the cabinets in my classroom. And I take my pointer and I go and I say, tell me when to stop when I get to number 6. So they're like in their head, they're counting 1, 2, 3. And we get really close to 6. And some of them get so excited, like, stop, even when I'm at 5. And I'm like, oh, this is number 6. When I'm pointing at 5, I'm like, no, Miss Elston. I'm like, okay, I'll keep going. And then I get to 6 and they all yell stop. And they just love feeling like I know more than Miss Elston. And they like get so excited and they're engaged and they're motivated because like we need to help her because she doesn't know her letters. And it just like holds them accountable for what they're learning, but also shows me like, wow, they don't know their numbers or they really know their numbers and they're really getting it. But those are just some levels those are just some examples of like high levels of engagement lessons that I've had so far in my classroom, which of course there's more, but those ones are the ones that really stick out to me. And that leads to a positive classroom environment because the students enjoy learning and they want to show me how smart they are. They want to show me what they learned. So it just allows them to show me and it lets me just like it melts my heart when they're so happy and they just smile when they're learning. So when they're engaged, they're motivated to learn and then our classroom is just like has this really fun home vibe that I feel like we're just a community of like a family of learners. And I love that feeling. School involvement. I try to be involved in my school as much as possible because it's my future. I already got offered a position there, so I want to be involved as much as I possibly can. So I got to participate in Pumpkin Palooza. So you can see this is all of my coworkers down here, and we dressed up as spiders and we decorated our hallway, and we let the kids they come and trick or treat. Because they might not get to trick or treat at home, so they get to come to school and trick or treat, and then we get to pass out candy and just have a fun time with them. And we just got to not only build relationships with the students when they come to the pumpkin palooza, like, oh my gosh, Miss Elston, you look so silly in your spider costume. And then we get to talk about when they come back to the class, like, I saw you at Pumpkin Palooza. I'm like, I know, I loved your costume. And like, it just shows that I recognize that they were there. I saw that they were there, and I loved seeing them outside the classroom as much as I love seeing them inside the classroom. But it also helped me build my relationship with my colleagues. I mean, we had so much fun decorating that hallway and just getting to know each other and dressing ourselves in these silly costumes to make these kids smile. But we went out to dinner before and just got to know each other. And it just led to a really amazing relationship with not only the students, but the colleagues. And when you build those relationship with the students and your colleagues, it impacts the classroom because I feel so comfortable with my colleagues now that I feel I can go talk to them about literally anything. And my students know that I'm a person outside of school just as I am inside the school. So yes, I'm Miss Elston, but I'm also their friend and I want to be there for them as much as possible. I also participated in pep rallies. I got called onto the floor and did games in front of the whole school. And it got me not only comfortable with my school system as a whole, but I felt like everybody knew who I was after that because everyone was like, "This is Miss Elston. She's our new teacher this year." And everybody knows me. So now I'm walking through the school and like I have fifth graders like, "Hi, Miss Elston." And like I feel like I can even impact the older kids as much as I can impact my younger kids just by being involved in the school as much as possible. Another thing is when sporting events are coming up, we talked as a kindergarten unit, just going and supporting those kids as a kindergarten class, as a kindergarten unit, and just going and be like, "Hey, I came to your game," or like ask them when their games are, and then like let them see that we care and we want to see them do things that they love, like basketball or baseball or football or literally anything. But getting to go as a kindergarten unit, we're also growing together as colleagues, but we're watching our students and we're showing our students how much we care. So those are just some examples of how I did school involvement in my student teaching this far and what I plan on doing in the future. Serving the diverse learning needs. So with my school, we have some students that are economically declined. So we some things that I am able to do to help those students is I provide school supplies if they can't afford them. So I think I had like 5 students this year that just couldn't, their family couldn't afford a crown box or other crowns or pencils or anything. So I just had extras in my classroom and I provided them with whatever they needed. And one of the best things was one of my students, he didn't have a crown box, he didn't have anything, and you could tell he was so upset because he didn't have that. But the second he got that crown box full of stuff, he was just beaming with happiness because he's like, "This is mine." I'm like, "Yeah, buddy, like it gets to stay here and you get to have it every day." But then he got sad because he's like, "I don't get to take these home with me," and he like started crying because he didn't have any crowns at home. So then I sent an extra box of crowns home with him just so he could have crowns at home and at school. And he was so happy and he loved it. And just getting able to serve him in ways that I didn't know I could. Like, and maybe I can't help him with his home life, but at least I can provide things to make him feel special as much as I possibly can. I also provide snacks if I feel like I know I have some students that may not be getting the nutrition that they might need. I take time out of my day to make sure that all of my students get snacks just so that if their next meals and until they come home, until they come back to school for breakfast, at least I know they have a snack to take home with them and eat if they get hungry. And something the school does school wide is coats. If we submit students' names that don't have any coats, we can ask their parents what size they need, and we provide them with winter coats if they don't have any. Um, Basically, a way that I just want to serve these students is make sure that they never feel like they can't be a part of something because of where they came from. And if they feel like they don't have any money and they can't afford that, I want them to know that they can come to me for help and I'm here for you and I want to protect you and help you as much as I possibly can. But I want you to know that if you don't have it, that's okay. I can help you. I can provide school supplies if you need it. Like, don't feel like you can't do something because of where you came from. Another way is with my E&L students. So I always want to make them feel welcome, even with the language barriers. So I ensure that they have a voice. I try to tie their culture in as much as I possibly can by reading books that might talk about things that they're familiar with. And then it helps not only with them, but it also helps my other students that might not have that culture shock. It helps them see, like, oh my gosh, there's people all around the world that might not be like me, but they're like my friends. And like just talk about how cool it is that they're different. It doesn't mean that they're not just like us. They're special, they're unique, and that's a really cool characteristic. So just making them feel welcome at all times. Oh, something that I did for my E&L students was I showed pictures if they were unsure of what something was. So I had a student that he decoded the word mop, but he didn't know what a mop was. So I was like, "Do you know what a mop is?" And he's like, "No." So I looked up a picture and I just showed him, "This is a mop." And I like showed him, and he's like, "Oh," and you can see the connections forming. So it just helped him make more connections as we were learning. And the last area of serving diverse needs I want to talk about is various races and ethnic backgrounds. So I just want my students to know that your background doesn't make you different. It makes you unique and special, and that everyone is welcome in my classroom, no matter where you're from. I don't care. I love you literally no matter what. It doesn't matter what you look like, where you're from, what you define yourself as. I'm gonna love you no matter what. And I want that to be known in my classroom. So I talk about it quite often, like how much I love my students. And no matter what you're going through, I'm there for you and I will always have your back. So those are some ways that I serve diverse needs in my classroom. presenting gender in an unbiased manner. I made sure that I decorated my classroom in a way that was not only welcoming for boys, but also for girls. And you can see in the bottom, it's not it's not just girls, it's not just boys. I have it so that it is welcoming for everybody in my classroom, and they know that they can come to my classroom. It's a safe place for them. Um, and I also want to make sure that my curriculum, what I'm teaching, I don't want it to just be based towards girls or just towards boys. I want it to be inviting for all of them. I want them all to have fun learning. I don't like, oh my gosh, this is so girly and they just don't enjoy it. I want them to feel like, wow, this was such a fun lesson, no matter what gender they identify themselves as. I just want both genders to feel, all genders to feel welcome in my classroom, and I want them to be included in learning. Differentiation for all students with special attention for exceptional learners in the general education classroom. So these are some examples of students that I feel like require special attention, whether they're low or high, or no matter what they are, just ways that I can help differentiate in my classroom. So Jack is one of my students that he has a lot of behavior issues, but I found that it's just like an attention thing. He wants attention, and when he's not getting that attention, he acts out. So when he's struggling, he just wants to give up. He's like, I can't do this. And I'm like, no, Jack, you can do this. And we sit down one on one and we work through things together. And he's like, wow. And when he finally sees he can do it, he is so happy. And it's the best thing ever to see him just glow up. So I just differentiate doing one on one with him. Michael, he's developmentally low. So I have to do a lot of one on one time with him because he doesn't know how to cut. He doesn't know how to read. He doesn't know his letters. He doesn't know that much. So I have to do that one on one differentiation with him to ensure that he's learning like the other students. It's just in a different way. Jackson has physical inhibitors, so I allow him to sit at a table because he can't get up and down from the carpet as easily as the other ones, as the rest of my friends in my class. So I just make sure that he feels included while he's sitting at his table because I know he has such a hard time getting up and down. And he's like, I'd rather just sit here, Miss Elston. And I let him do that. But I just make sure that he's constantly feeling involved um, and included like the rest of my classes. Another student, Cambry, she's extremely high. She is literally reading at a level H, which is amazing. She can read it fluently, but she can also answer those comprehension questions like no other. So what we're doing for her differentiation is we're putting her in a group of with peers in other classes that are also reading at level H. So there's two other students that are reading at a level H. And we're putting them in a group together so that we can push them because they get bored in our classroom because they're so much higher than the rest of my students. But just letting her have that differentiation that she needs. And then lastly, Edward and Hillary are my language barrier students. So like I mentioned earlier, just showing them pictures if they're unsure of something. Basically, I just differentiate to make sure that all students know that they can do whatever they put their mind to if they just believe in themselves and we work together as a team, we can accomplish a lot together. Accommodations for students with disabilities. So I have two students that I do a lot of small one-on-one, small group or one-on-one instruction with, which is Jackson and Michael. I do one-on-one with both of them as much as I possibly can just to ensure that they're not falling behind more than they already are. And I also make sure that their IEPs are being followed as much as possible to make sure that they are getting everything that they need. I ensure that they're a part of whole group as well as small group activities so they can interact with all their peers in my classroom and not just the two that they work with constantly. I make sure they're with everybody all the time so they can have that opportunity to grow friendships. And then I administer my test individually to both of them to make sure that they are understanding the questions. I'm reading the questions to them. I'm following. I'm pointing to the answer options so that they're not having struggles and not being able to show me what they can do because of their disabilities. And then lastly, I give resources to additional resources such as a number line to Michael so that he can count at his desk and he can point to the number line to see what numbers which because he really struggles with counting and identifying those numbers. So just giving him additional resources to help him learn as much as possible. And then with Jackson, I make sure that he's getting what he needs, not only by me, but from the nurse and other teachers in the building, because they might not know what he's going through. So I have to make sure I communicate those needs with everybody else in the classroom, in the school, such as like he needs sunscreen, he needs a wheelchair to help him get around. So like I have to make sure everybody's aware of that, not just me. So he's getting what he needs everywhere in the school system. Technology, I implement technology as much as I possibly can because we have Chromebooks in our school and the students love working on them, quite frankly. So I let them play, but really they're learning. I excel daily. They get on Epic where they can have the books read them to them and they can practice reading and following the text, and just like it kind of models reading for them. So I think it's a really helpful tool. I do Reading Rangers, which is a really cool software that helps them learn their alphabet, and it just goes through different quests. And at the end of the quest, they have to know that focus letter. So it's just a lot of fun for them. They love it, but they're learning as they're doing it. And then I also implement Redbird, which is a math curriculum that helps them. It actually tests them at the beginning to see where they're at, and then it places them based on their data, and it places them on a certain place on the website so that they are exactly where they need to be, and it helps them grow. So it kind of differentiates for all the students no matter where they're at, which is super cool, to make sure that each student is getting what they're needing in their math. Um, and I make sure that the students know that they need to be always be safe with their computers, and they're only doing what they're supposed to be doing at all times, even when their teacher's not watching. Data and assessment, I think it's one of the most important things in the school is data, and just analyzing that data to reflect on what you need to do better to help these students grow. So I use assessment daily in my classroom, whether it's formative or summative. I use it as much as I possibly can, whether it's thumbs up or thumbs down. Show me how you're feeling, just like if you understand this topic, so that I know, okay, these students need help. They don't understand, they're confused. Or if I give a summative assessment, I can see and reflect on that data and see like these students are really struggling with this topic. And before I can move on, I need to go back and revisit that topic. What I do is we have progress monitoring every 3 weeks, every 3 to 4 weeks, and we test students based on their letters, their sounds, their sight words, reading a sentence, any of those things. And what we do is I take that data and I form my groups based on that data. So I have students in groups based on where they're at academically, and it really helps when I'm doing my groups when they're all on the same wavelength. It really helps them learn, because like, wow, we're finally getting it. And then I can see this group really needs to focus on letters. This group really needs to focus on sight words. This group can read a text and comprehend it. And it just helps me reflect on where my students are at to make sure that they're getting to their full potential. I look at the data to help me guide my lesson the following day. So just basically looking back and making sure that if the students are struggling with what a rectangle looks like from the day before, I make sure I do a quick review over that before we go into the next lesson, so that that little misunderstanding doesn't make them fall farther behind. Just making sure that they're on the same wavelength as me, and they understand what I'm expecting them to learn and what they need to do. And it kind of helps them see like, wow, she notices that we're struggling with this, and she wanted to reteach that quickly. And I just use it to help guide with my RTI groups, which is a 30-minute time when we get to focus in on what they need to practice on. So if they need to focus on sight words, it's 30 minutes that I can practice with sight words, or it's 30 minutes that I can focus in on this. So I use my data and my assessment to form my month or my week or my days. I take that, I analyze it, I come home, I sit on my couch, I look at that data, and I'm like, what are my students struggling with? What are they doing well with? And I take that data and I implement my teaching skills that I possibly can to make them as successful as possible. Challenges during student teaching. Since I had my own classroom, there was a lot of challenging things, mainly just having to do this all by myself. I mean, I had my mentor teacher, but she had her own class, so it's not like she could be there to help me all the time. So it was a very challenging, but it was a rewarding experience. I learned how to classroom manage very quickly, and I feel like that's one of my strongest things now, because of how many behavior issues we have in that school. I had to nip those behaviors in the butt as quickly as possible. Um, it allowed me I had to learn to ask for help when I was struggling. My mentor teacher couldn't see me struggling. I would have to tell her, like, I'm really struggling with this, with teaching my students this, or I don't know what to do when the student does this. And just like having to be open minded and asking for new help and trying new strategies that they do, and see if it works with me, and implement them in my classroom, and just see what works and see what doesn't works. Um, and I just had to be patient. I had to learn. That was probably one of my biggest things, is to be patient, because these kids, it's not their fault that they don't know these things. They're new at this. So like when I'm working with a student with the letter A and they still aren't getting it, I have to realize it's not their fault and just be patient at all times. And that was really hard. But my goal was to never lose my patience, because it's not their fault. So that's just some of the ways that I learned lessons, like on how to be a better classroom management, like just being better with classroom management and being flexible at all times, because you never know what your day is going to throw you. So just willing to be flexible at all times. But it was really a rewarding experience in all. I had to learn how to problem solve and be flexible. So I had to ask myself, what can I do differently to help these students that are struggling in a certain area? Having to go back, even when I don't really have time to go back over that topic again, but making that time to make sure that my students are learning what they need to learn. And also reflecting on what I'm doing well and what I'm not doing so well and what I can do better next time. So those are just some ways that I use my flexibility, and I use feedback from my mentor teachers just to see what I can do better and do an analysis on that and reflect on that to be better. Feedback, I was in constant communication with Debbie Hansen from Hanover, Crystal, that's my mentor teacher, and Bobby. I asked them, what can I do better? And I implemented that. I'm like, I'm really struggling with teaching um, rhyming. What can I do better to help these students with rhyming? And I would take what they say and I'd implement my classroom and see if it worked for my classroom. I'd ask my mentor teachers if I could watch their RTI groups, their reading groups, their math groups. I'd ask my admin, I really need help because this is my first year. I need help as much as I can. So I'd ask them for help, and then they would be able to let me go in other classrooms and grow in ways that I didn't know I could if I didn't ask for that help. And I would just ask them what they recommend when this happens or when this happens because they have that experience. So I'd take that and I'd implement their experiments in my classroom just to make me a better teacher. Um, so thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I can't wait to chat with you guys when we have our interview in a few short days. Thank you.